Hello, everybody. Hello. I am Bill, the company's expert. That was the shortest turnaround time between two live streams I think I've ever done. I was just doing a live stream, the weekly live stream called How to Get Hired, and that ended 5 minutes ago. And so in the time it takes me to reboot my computer or whatever, it's I'm back on. So welcome. This is a weekly stream I do called Honest HR Nitrous. This is where we talk about the realities of job search and HR in the real world, and all the ugly truth, all the rough edges, things that it's not the theory that people say, it's the realities of how these things actually turn out. This is what we talk about here. And we had a really interesting discussion going, the last thing in the last live stream, to do with companies and HR departments, where their loyalties are, and managers who abuse what was termed as the performance improvement process. Basically the HR process to terminate people, right? How they abuse that and use it for political reasons. I thought that was a really interesting topic. It's a shame that I had to stop everything and restart everything, but this stream has been scheduled, so I've got to conform to that. The title of this particular stream today is called Job Search. You have to dance to their tune. And we were already kind of talking about that previously, but this is a very important topic. And it's something that I know a lot of younger job seekers, who haven't been looking for jobs over many years, they struggle with this. The entire idea, like I kind of said earlier, was, you might have your own ideas about what your value is and what you can bring to a role and why they would want to hire you, right? You have your own thoughts on this, what your advantages are and how you shine and what situations you can bring special talents to, help contribute to, and all this kind of stuff. But the problem is that if you try and sell yourself, you try and get a job and convince a recruiter or a hiring manager about this stuff, often what we see is that people are not really receptive to it. And the way this stuff actually works is that they have already made up their mind about what they're looking for. Usually when they write a job posting, they'll say here are the requirements. We're looking for this. They've already made their mind up about that. And so the only way you can sort of convince them that you're the best person for that role is to talk to them in their terms, to talk to them about these points that they mentioned. They said, we're looking for these. Because if you start talking about something that they haven't said they're looking for, usually, regardless of the reality, you don't really succeed in persuading them very well. So that's how this stuff usually works. I see there's 18 people here. Thank you for being here. You guys are awesome. Yes, get in the chat. Let me know this. If you're seeing my face, you should see the chat box somewhere nearby. So you can get in there. You can type in your comments, type in questions, things you're struggling with, things that you're wondering about, and I will do my best to help you out. It's kind of a bit of a rough day. It's New Year's Day, 2025. So Happy New Year! Most people are out kind of partying or recovering from the partying right about now. But others of us have other concerns. People are between jobs. People are trying to improve themselves. And, so you are here trying to do some self-improvement. So thank you very much. I will try not to let you down. As I said, get in the chat. We're talking about some very interesting stuff to do with management theory and management practice in organizations. I know much has been said in recent years about the loyalty of HR departments. For example, if you have concerns as an employee and you go to your HR department and, maybe you feel you're being harassed, or you feel you're being discriminated against, or you feel that, you're not being evaluated fairly by your boss, or some issue you might have, right? And HR likes to play the mediator role, and they position themselves as sort of being your impartial representative that you can go to and almost like a therapist and sort of tell them what's up, with you and all this kind of stuff. And you get this impression that they are some kind of impartial authority that's not on your side, not on your boss's side, not on the company's side. They're on the side of what's right? I know a lot of organizations, they position themselves like this. The reality, of course, is that they are not impartial. They very firmly represent the organization. They are a part of the organization. They are paid by the organization. They represent the organization. And so if you have a conflict where you, could be some kind of liability to the organization, either you could sue them or you could run to the government and complain about their, how they're treating their employees or their HR practices or, something like that. They are going to be very much your enemy. They are not going to be on your side, regardless of the image that they try and project to you. This is a known thing. That's the reality. So if ever you found yourself in that situation, you know what I'm talking about. Julia's here. Happy New Year to you and yours, Bill. Well, thank you very much, Julia. Same to you. All the best for 2025 and all the best to everybody here. I wish you a lot of success and prosperity in 2025. This is the year that you crush it. This is the year that you, if you're between jobs, that you certainly get hired and you really find something that fits very well with you and what your goals are. I wish that on everyone. And if I can help in a small way to make that happen for you, that's what I'm going to try and do. John Harrison says, Happy New Year. Yes, same to you, John. Thank you for being here. And to Kumar, Mayank Kumar, Happy New Year. My favorite ex-CEO. Well, thank you. Of all the ex-CEOs that you hang out with and you chum around with, right? On a New Year's celebration, you could get one under your arm and give him a bit of a nuggie there, right? Of all of them, I'm your favorite. That's high praise. So that's great. And yes, I'm an ex-CEO. I am never going back. I had my fill of it. And the fact that I'm on YouTube doing stuff like this, that pretty much is like a self-fulfilling prophecy. I don't think I'm ever going to be, even if I wanted to, I would never be invited back if I have or had a public presence like I have now. It just, in many ways, it's kind of incompatible. So I'm resigned to that. And I'm happy. I actually enjoy this kind of stuff. It's been a real challenge, not to talk all about myself for a second or anything, but it's been a real challenge to come out and talk about certain things because you're conditioned not to. You keep things under your hat. That's just what you do. That's the role of a lot of managers. And as you go upwards, that's just how it goes, Everybody's got an opinion about something. And a lot of times people have very uninformed opinions about things. And a lot of times they don't see it your way. And, so that's one reason why you don't just blab about everything that's going on. A lot of things you deal with are also confidential too. There's many players in the game, and it's just bad form to start blabbing about stuff. So it's been a bit of a shift in culture for me. What really helped me was going back to school and teaching, because then you're talking all about stuff. And the more I did teaching, the more I felt a bit comfortable, giving a bit of details on how stuff is done that I saw and that I did, and it just went from there. So thank you for being here. Julia says, have you ever danced to their tune? How was it? Could you share the experience? Well, it's more of a jitterbug kind of thing. They have the Charleston. That's where you're kind of doing this, right? Now, if ever you could dance in a chair with a microphone in front of you, that's how it would look. It helps if you have 3 or 4 chins all kind of bouncing around too. Yeah, so the title of this, like Julia was getting at, is Dancing to Their Tune. Yes, I have had to dance to people's tunes many times. Like, you see, I mean, okay, depending on what it is, okay, a little part of you may die, right? Depending on what it is. Most things it's going to be pretty harmless. But if there's like some real benefit, it's like a real dream job or something, you know, you might have to suck it up and just kind of project, you know, what they want you to be, right? If you're looking for a job and you're going to job interviews, you guys know how that feels, right? In my experience, my kind of limited experience at like upper management and stuff, it's exactly the same, but more, you know? There's even less room for keeping it real and, you know, putting all your cards on the table. So, yeah, you know, if you want people to regard you as like the person that they choose, you have to be that person to them. Just how it goes. It's very hard to have your cake and eat it too. To be like totally real, to wear your opinions on your sleeve about everything, but yet come across as the person that they pick, right? You're everything that they were hoping for. You're everything that they want you to be, right? It's very hard for both of those to exist simultaneously, you know? You know, and that can lead to, that can also go too far, and it can lead to some very real issues in the real world. Like, for example, objecting to something and saying like, honestly, I don't think that's a good idea. I think that's a mistake. And I think that we need to not do that, right? Maybe that's not what they want to hear. You know what I mean? And it's very hard to sort of know when to speak up and say things like that, and when to just button your lip and smile and nod and go along with what they're wanting you to do, right? Not every battle is worth fighting. Some of them are, right? It's very hard to distinguish these things. And I know a lot of people that have made the wrong call both ways in a lot of those type of situations. TTC says, Happy New Year. Got a great new job. Congratulations, TTC. If I had crowd effects or applause effects, I would hit them now. How would you deal with HR going around making people not speak with certain colleagues because of investigations, as this breaks colleague relationships? Well, I mean, it would depend on the nature of what this investigation is for and what's going on. I wouldn't give a blanket response to that. Sometimes it might make sense not to open your big mouth and say a bunch of things that might be ill-considered, you know, depending on what's going on. Other times, the right thing to do is to speak up, you know. Maybe that aligns with what's best for you. Maybe it goes completely in the opposite direction of what's best for you, but maybe you still need to do it. I don't know. It really depends on the situation. There's no one size fits all answer to that. The thing that might help in those situations, if it's kind of confusing from a moral perspective of what you should do, is analyzing everybody's incentives, like all the players in this situation. As much as you possibly can, try and analyze what their incentives are, right? Like what would be good for them, what would not be good for them. Almost universally, you're going to be missing information. You don't know what might be going on behind the scenes with things. But like, for example, things like the HR department, you know where their loyalties are. Their loyalties are to the company. They're acting in the best interests of the organization, not in your best interest. Even if they say they are, they're not. Because they are paid by the organization. They are tasked with fulfilling the goals set for them by the organization. You know what I mean? And you can't always assume, you know, like, for example, one would assume that, well, the organization would not knowingly break laws, for example, like labor laws or whatever. You can't always assume that. Sometimes they can. There's been many, many scandals that have broken, showing big companies doing that kind of stuff. That sometimes exists on smaller companies too. I think anyone who worked in the construction business or the real estate business or other similar things, you've seen that, right? where technically that's not allowed, but they're doing it anyway, right? And if you speak up, they don't just agree with you and praise you and change. They may retaliate against you and keep doing what they're not supposed to be doing anyway, right? And sometimes you don't know what you're walking into. That makes it even more fun, right? So this is just these happy little moments in life where we learn something about ourselves and about other people. Yeah, hard to navigate. What is probably the hardest thing is to sort of not have a knee-jerk reaction, not like get your emotions all up in a twist and, just go and start yelling at people or go and start complaining openly about whatever, even if you have some kind of personal policy of like, I never respond to things like this in the moment. I always go away for 24 hours, sleep on it, and then decide whether I'm going to say what I would like to say or not, right? That can really help. One of the good things about getting older is that generally speaking, we tend to be less emotional. Usually like really uncontrollably intense emotions are like the reign of youth, right? So one good thing about getting a little bit older, you're maybe into middle age or whatever, is you're not quite as passionate about things. You don't get quite as angry as you did when you were like in your early 20s, when you perceive an injustice or you feel victimized or whatever. So it can help you do the right thing in situations where you don't just fly off the handle. You actually consider before you speak, or before you do something. And then when you do speak or you do act, it's much more effective. It doesn't just feel good. It actually achieves the desired result. So anyway, I don't know if that helps at all. I'm just rambling now, but yeah, listen, I'm not sure what your situation is. If you're between jobs, if you're looking for a job, if you're kind of puzzled about something, get in the chat. Let me know. I don't have an agenda. In case you haven't realized that by now, I don't have an agenda of what to talk about. So I'm just going off what you guys say in the chat box. Excuse me. Okay, TTC says, what I noticed is that in investigation notes, there's only things benefiting the company or certain people higher up or not making it look bad, while there is nothing benefiting the person investigated. Yeah, I would not be amazed to see that. Because it's almost like saying, we're at a trial and we've sorted through all the personal papers of the defending counsel. And what's kind of shocking is that it seems like all the activities the defending counsel has undertaken are to shift the blame away from their client to somebody else, right? That doesn't seem fair and that doesn't seem impartial. And you're right, because the defending counsel is not there to be some kind of impartial arbitrator that just wants to get to the truth. They're there to defend their client. That's their entire purpose, right? Their goal, overarching goal for everything they do. So HR is like the defending counsel for the organization. If there's ever a dispute between, like, say, an employee and the organization, like their boss or other employees or something, they're going to side very much against the employee, right? That's how these things work. And you can see this by looking at their incentive structure. To say this very bluntly, who signs their checks? The organization. The organization is the one they report to. They report to, the director of HR reports to usually a CEO or somebody high up. Usually it's a CEO, depending on how the company is structured. But and they're also paid by the organization. So I mean, yeah, they're going to side with the organization. That's just what they do. What muddies the water is that a lot of times HR departments, when it comes to these kinds of issues, like resolving conflicts between employees or between a worker and their boss, they sometimes project this false image of, we're your friend, we just want to get to the truth. We just want to resolve this, and the best way to resolve it is by like admitting the problems and working through them. And that stuff sounds very good. And maybe there are some organizations out there that, they are admirable and they do actually take some of these principles to heart. But the problem is that directly conflicts with the incentive structure of where their loyalties are. You know what I mean? Wow, that was phrased very poorly. I did not get a lot of sleep last night, so that might be factoring in here. But you know what I mean? Like this is the reality of it. So, don't take my word for this. I know on YouTube there's at least one channel like done by a lawyer. I stumbled across a YouTube channel. I can't remember what the name of the channel was, but it's like done by a lawyer in the US. And obviously the lawyer has like a day job being a lawyer, in the context of HR disputes and things. And so they were doing some videos on this kind of thing. So they could tell you even better, like they're on the forefront of that. But yeah, I mean, the HR is just an arm of the organization, just like the supply chain is just an arm of the organization. Anything to do with inventory, materials, that kind of stuff, logistics, that's the supply chain organization. Anything to do with employees, the workforce, making the workforce more productive, making them like minimizing costs associated with the workforce, eliminating risk associated with the workforce, potential disruptions. That's all the HR department. That's what they're there for. My screen keeps blanking out on me. I've seen that before. Okay, we're back. Julia says, I have many experiences when I got cornered for being double minority in a society. It happened at work. While I did nothing to any of them. How do you deal with this, Bill? Yeah, I generally steer away from talking about things like about minority. It's very politically charged. No matter what you say, you piss off like all kinds of people. I'd like to think of it as like, I don't know. In all honesty, I feel like certainly the last 10 years, Western society has kind of lost their mind in a way. Like stuff that, it just nobody would do before, we're now doing, and we're losing our sense of decency and, and wherever you fall on the political spectrum, it's like they're both equally guilty. They're both equally as unreasonable and ridiculous. And, a lot of times this stuff just smashes together and, you're just caught in the middle. And so I don't like to talk about this stuff. It doesn't really do any good. We are all minorities, everyone, whether you're a minority in your skill set or your personality type or your background, you know what I mean? You're never going to be like 100%, the same as everyone else, perfect. And nor would you want to be, because then you're not special, right? We're all individuals and we all have unique backgrounds, unique thoughts and ideas and feelings and, things that have led us there. So, I mean, you know what I mean? We all have to get along with that. We all have to exist together. Anyway, that's about as much as I'm going to say on this. Just a bit of a minefield talking about that stuff. I will say one thing, like I was directly confronted with this stuff when I had to teach HR because, like, for example, people would talk about things like the wage gap, right, between genders, right? And you've got issues where on the one hand, you've got, seeming injustice where between the genders, you have like different compensations, right? When you add up stuff, but yet at the same time, when you add up years of experience, which is the primary metric that a lot of recruiters care about, you do have a disparity there too. And so the question is, should people be paid commensurate with years of experience, or should they be paid the same, whether they're whatever gender they are, regardless of years of experience? There's no evading that question when you talk about the gender gap in the context of HR, because there's a direct contradiction there. And whichever your political beliefs are, you'll either say one or the other, and there's no logic. It's just, if you think it should be tied to this, great. If you think it should be tied to that, great. There is no right answer. It's just what people believe, and you can't have an intelligent discussion about it because it's just based on dogma. Just some people believe it should be tied to this, and other believe. So the more you talk about it, you get like you just get division, because it boils down to how you think it should be, And so when you start advising people and saying it should be like this, it's very shaky. So I don't engage in that kind of stuff. Youssef says, as you said, a part of you dies. Yeah, welcome to the world. Many in the workforce are feeling tired, drained, and they had enough. But then they got to keep food on the table, so they nod their head and continue putting out fallacy. Yeah, I hate to break it to you, Youssef. I don't know if you're necessarily saying this, but everybody always thinks that hardship or issues like this are like new. They're not. They've always been around. It's just that we forget. Either it was before our time, or we just weren't interested back then. But it's always been the case. This stuff has never gone away. It's always been tough, and it's always been unfair. It's just that the way it's tough and the way it's unfair changes. But it's always been tough. Like before my time, in the 1970s, they had things like they had the gas crisis, and you had interest rates just like shooting up, like to levels we couldn't imagine now, and this was like, it had effects all over the world and all this kind of stuff. And if that happened now, people would lose their minds. Like that was a big deal, this stuff is always with us. Okay. It's not just a new thing that's all of a sudden happening now. I want to state that. That's what I've learned. Amaze says, how would you handle declining or accepting a job offer while awaiting an interview outcome for a more desirable job with a different organization? Great question, Amazed. Very simple answer. I take it. You got something in your hand right now. Okay, you've got two companies, Company A, Company B. You're pursuing something with Company A. Meanwhile, Company B offers you a job. Now, you're still hoping for Company A. That's kind of your preference. But Company B is offering you a job. Here's what I do. I take the Company B offer, right? You don't know if Company A is going to materialize. If it's not signed and sealed and delivered, and even sometimes if it is, there are no guarantees. So take it. Now, after you take it and you say yes, and you sign, and they accept it, you can still pursue the opportunity with Company A. And you should. See if you can get that one too, right? But at the end of the day, you're going to end up with something, And you may, like if you have an offer from Company B, that actually gives you a much stronger bargaining position to deal with Company A, Right? So I would take it. I wouldn't refuse something now that's concrete, that's sort of happening, for the option of something that may not occur. You know what I mean? That would not be preferable, right? So given those two options, I would take the Company B offer. But good question. Julia, it was in the 90s. What? Was okay, I was referring to a gas crisis in the 70s, right? I'm not sure if that's what you're referring to. Are you referring to your experiences, being cornered as a double minority, all that kind of stuff? Julia says, thank you for the insightful answer and advice, Bill. I truly appreciate it. Well, thank you for the question, Julia. Listen, I felt like I really disappointed you with that answer because I just didn't answer. But hopefully that gives you something. It seems to have. Yeah, don't shy away from asking these also, you know. If it's a real issue to you, it's a real issue, you know. So yeah, and thank you for your participation. Thank you for being here. I hope that 2025 is an awesome year for you. I hope that this is the year that things really, really happen for you and you come into your own. That's what I wish for everyone here. Annie2385 says, going through acquisition transition right now, what's the best way to deal with seeing colleagues let go and you're feeling burned out for being overworked and lost the autonomy you once had? Okay. I went through a pretty prominent version of this where I was on the executive management committee of a company. I was one of the people that helped run that company, and we were acquired. And I did not stay. I stayed for something like a year or whatever it was, like to go through the post-merger integration or post-acquisition integration. And then I told them like many months in advance, I said like 9 months in advance or something. I said like, I'm leaving on this date, like in 9 months. I'll help you guys integrate. I'll help move everything over to the new system. And then I'm out of here because I have no interest in going forward with the new company once they've sort of swallowed us up. And that's how I dealt with it. It's just like I was saying earlier, sometimes we're in a good situation, but the situation itself just goes south. It's not due to us. It's nothing we have control over. It just, the good times end. And that's a common thing with like acquisitions, you know? The reality of acquisitions is that on paper, they always look more valuable than they end up being. This is like one of the realities of, you know, things like private equity and stuff like that, is that they look like they're going to be worth more on paper. And then when you actually go through the practicalities of, you know, acquiring a company and all this and all the turmoil that involves, is they end up not being as valuable as everyone predicted before they bought the thing, right? So it's almost like IPOs, you know, like you go public, you have an IPO. On the first day, it's valued very high, and then it just drops off, you know? But yet people keep doing it. People seem to forget. They always seem to forget. They always think like, oh no, I can get over those problems next time. And they can't. That's not to say that they're all flops, because they're not. But, you know, a lot of times it always looks more rosy on paper. But then when they actually go through it, it doesn't work out as well. So if you were in an organization that got acquired, yeah, it could be, you know, the good times are over. It's like you got a new sheriff in town, and the first thing they do is they cut a lot of things. They like to look at things and say, that's dead weight, that's dead weight, that's dead weight. And then they just eliminate them. And then usually what happens is that after a certain amount of time, they realize, there was a reason why we had that and that and that. And I guess we have to reinstate it. You know? Also, the way they do stuff is, you know, sometimes this stuff matters, like where they drive away the good employees and they regret it. Other times, I hate to say it, they might drive away some of the better employees, but it really doesn't matter. The company still ends up making a lot of money because of their brand or, you know, their strategic position. And, you know, their actions are shown to be justified. That happens a lot too. Now listen, Annie, 2385, you always should be looking out for yourself. For number one, you should always do the best thing that's right for you. And obviously things have been changing around you. Okay. So it seems like you're still at the organization. Other people have been let go, but you're still there. There's going to be new policies. There's going to be new bosses. Because we're humans and we have human failings, we tend to feel a sense of loyalty sometimes when it perhaps shouldn't be there, right? You might feel loyal to the company. You might also feel a certain amount of inertia. You don't want to find a new job and leave the one that you're familiar with, where you're comfortable. And who am I to say whether you should or not? I don't know. But make sure that you're being objective about your situation and look at your options and try to get other options. The more options you have, the more power you have, and the more likely that you will end up on top when this is all over. Okay? So I've seen a lot of people kind of squander opportunities because they have this false sense of loyalty. They're loyal to something that isn't loyal back to them. You know what I mean? Either they're loyal to an organization that's now being run by different people, so it's no longer the same unit, or it's just like they don't want to jump, they don't want to move, so they're kind of trying to justify it to themselves, and they're staying longer than they should because it's no longer a good situation. It's not your best option. It's not to your advantage. So make sure you're considering all of those. Don't be close-minded to doing things. Okay, if people are being fired all around you and it's quite stressful, you know what I mean? And I can tell that you're a bit stressed about this. Don't be afraid to look at what else is out there. There might be something really good that's out there right now that you can just jump into that, and you leave all of this behind, all of the stress, all of the uncertainty about the future. You know what I mean? And it will be the right thing for you. Okay. Now, full disclosure, I'm a person that's tended to jump a lot. Okay. So that's where I'm coming from. That might not be right for everybody, but that's the way I look at things. So, but that's what I would say. Just something to consider. Julia says, thank you for the insightful answer and advice, Bill. I read that. Okay. Thank you. Kyle, in your opinion, what would be an acceptable length of time at a previous job when looking over a resume? It's gotten shorter and shorter over the last 20 years. So 3 months is still too short. 2 years is still perfectly fine. Somewhere in between, like a year, that's going to be a judgment call. That's going to depend on the person that's evaluating this. Okay? So it's going to vary. I mean, there's no one right answer where this is enough time and that's not. It's going to vary by the perspective of the person. But generally speaking, 2 years is perfectly fine. 3 months is way too short. Okay, probably 6 months would be, unless you're talking about an internship or you're in high school or something, 6 months is probably going to be regarded as too short also. So somewhere in there between 6 months and 2 years, it's where it starts looking like it's enough. I know that's pretty general, but I mean, it's a general thing. Amaze says, thank you, Bill. You're absolutely welcome. Kyle. Oh, Kyle is talking to Annie 2385. Yeah. You're welcome, Annie 2385. Yeah, this is the thing. Companies, we're talking about HR departments, okay? Now, one of the things that they don't really talk about, or I don't see people talking about a lot, is, how can I put this? Brainwashing? Companies have an interest, a self-interest in projecting an image to their employees that you should be happy to work here. It's a privilege to work here. You're working for one of the best organizations around. We are better than all our competitors. Why would you ever want to consider leaving? You know what I mean? It serves the organization if their employees believe things like this, okay? And you get different companies and different organizations. Some of them are really aggressively push to create belief in these principles, right? I would call it brainwashing. I don't know if that's too strong a term, but they almost like bombard employees with propaganda. Sometimes very subtle, sometimes very overt. To make you believe these things, these principles. You're working for the best company ever. No sane person would ever want to leave because you're already at the best place. There's no opportunities out there for you that are better than working here, right? We're on our A game and we're crushing it, and we're doing nothing. In the future for us is going to be nothing but expansion and growth and good times, right? Like principles such as these, they would love if they could, if there's a little USB port in the back of your head, they could just connect you up and program you to believe these things. They would love that. Like that would be their dream. And some organizations go to insane lengths to try and pull the wool over the eyes of their workforce and make them believe this stuff. Now, where how do you regard that? Is that just is that totally unethical and it's like Big Brother mind control, or is it just standard, understandable team spirit? That one could expect. You know what I mean? I don't know how you look at that. Some people will say it's this one. Some people say it's the other, right? But if you're younger and you don't realize that they're doing this, you might be taken in by a lot of this stuff. A lot of their efforts will be successful to you. I started my career by working for a company that one of their hiring policies was they just like it's been commented about, like Microsoft, they intentionally wanted people that had come right out of school and had never worked for any other organization, so that you're totally green. You've never had a real career job before. And this was intentional. They wanted people that fit into that classification. And the reason they wanted that was because then they could tell you, oh yeah, you have to work, say, the day shift, but we expect you to come in for a 2-hour meeting at 3:00 in the morning, once a month or twice a month. And that's normal. And you don't get paid for it, but attendance is mandatory. And then you're going to be on the night shift, the midnight shift. So you work from midnight to 8 a.m. or something. But you've got to come in for a meeting at 2 p.m. in the afternoon one day, and then you got to go back home and sleep, and then you got to come back to work. And you don't get paid for it. And that's normal. Things like this. And people would believe this because you've never had another job before. You don't know what's normal. You don't know what's reasonable. And you'd be thinking this is kind of fishy. But from multiple directions, they were convincing you, oh no, this is a perfectly standard thing. And then they would convince you, oh yeah, you're working for the best company in the world, and everybody wants to work here, and you're the chosen few, and so you would never want to leave, and we're already paying you way above what anyone else would pay, which was completely false. And a lot of people just believe it. And I saw that firsthand, and they went to great lengths to really brainwash people about this stuff. I'm actually glad in hindsight that I had that experience early on, because it really opens your eyes to, all kinds of different incentives and things. You're part of this machine that just, is serving their purpose. And part of their purpose is to have you believe things like this that are false. And they actively try to get you to believe these lies because it's self-serving. You know what I mean? You have to be on guard against this. And, we talk about hiring on this YouTube channel, right? So in the context of hiring, they'll convince you, oh yeah, you're already being paid, like I said earlier, you're already being paid way above what your value is. So, none of our competitors, they will never be able to pay you what we pay you. And a lot of people will, hearing that, they won't even go out and verify that. And so you're stuck in this bubble, this artificial bubble, where you're being exploited, and you're not even aware. You're being lied to. And you would never know because you're in this company that with everybody else in the company at your level all believes this stuff too. And you're not talking to anyone outside the company. And you get this thing that it's almost like being in a cult where like if somebody sort of wakes up and says, wait a minute, I got a job offer from this other competitor for double what I'm making to do the same job, and then you leave, one would think that everyone in that department would follow suit. They would wake up to this, but no, they doubled down on their belief that like, no, that person was insane. They didn't really fit in here, and good riddance because we belong here. It's a very real thing. We got several people in here talking. Let's see. Okay, so did I do this? Amaze says sometimes people seek the truth when in fact it is not the truth they want, but an illusion they could bear to live with. Yeah, that's the human condition. I think the last 10 years have proven that to all of us, right? People get their news from a source that reinforces their own pre-existing opinions. They go and find the answer they want to hear, and then that's the one they act on. Like, all like confirmation bias and like all this kind of stuff. That we've even given them all names, right? That are now in common parlance. Yeah, that happens everywhere, and it's not to our advantage sometimes. Ginny says, hello everyone. I'm leaving carpentry for human resources, and I'm thankful for your videos to help in my career change. Still looking for employment, but the learning has been interesting. That's interesting if you're going to human resources by looking at my stuff. I kind of beat up on human resources quite a lot, like especially today. So it's interesting that you're getting information from me, and then you're going to human resources. Listen, hey, I wish you all the luck in the world, and there are some really good HR people out there. Like, I'm talking in terms of recruitment and selection. There's people that work in the HR department that deal with benefits. They deal with all kinds of, salary and compensation, like all kinds of pretty benign stuff. They deal with safety. They deal with workers' compensation. They deal with, all these different functions, right? I'm talking primarily about recruitment and selection when I comment on it in this channel. But wherever you're going in HR, I wish you all the luck. TTC says, previous job, they changed the organization culture, bought by a big company, and many people who did not fit it 100% were targeted for silly things in order to get them fired. Yeah, like, I wouldn't doubt it. That stuff does happen. But like, this is, see, the thing that's interesting to me is like, this is the kind of activity that can really backfire for like a lot of companies, because depending on how it went down and why they bought the company originally, sometimes it's doing things like this that can destroy the value of the thing that you just bought, right? Like if you buy a company because it's very profitable and all its customers like it, and you want to add that to your portfolio of business operations. It's like you buy it, but because of the way you do it, you drive all the key employees out of the organization. So you buy this shell, and it doesn't make the money anymore that you were wanting it to because all the talent left. That doesn't always happen like that. Sometimes companies will buy like a company for its assets. We don't really care about what it's doing right now. We just think that, it owns all these properties and it owns all this, these IPs or whatever, that's why we're buying it. So they couldn't care less about the employees leaving, and it shows, right? But sometimes this is the reason why you buy a company, and then you're surprised at how it's not performing after you bought it. My experience with this stuff has been a lot of the people pulling the strings at the top are like generally financial type people. And when it comes to this kind of stuff, they really don't have a clue what they're doing. Sometimes they do if they've got like some, industry type person like as their CEO or something. But it's just like there's been a lot of things that have been messed up by financial people because they don't see the entity is just abstracted. It's this entity that makes money, and they don't see the people. They don't see like how these changes, how it's going to drive everybody away that's in this entity, and then you're going to have problems with it. Or it devalues a lot of things. I find that stuff quite interesting, actually, but I don't really get a chance to talk about it. So thank you for bringing it up. Julia says, thank you for the insights. Amazed, I guess that is the case most of the time. It's certainly a case a lot of the time. Abs TJ says, how can I best leverage the HRBP to my advantage as a first-time manager? What is HRBP? Like, once again, don't use acronyms with me. I get people talking from all over the world and from every industry. Is this HR best practices? Like what are we talking about? Matt Stone says, I'm 35 and can say that 100% of what this man is saying is accurate. Well, thank you. The company I worked for replaced my position with a team of people from India. I had to write hundreds of pages of documentation to help with the knowledge transfer. Yeah, you see, this is another conflict in organizations. Organizations, they would love you to share your knowledge. What do they say? Like, knowledge shared is power, right? The problem is that that's completely false. Knowledge hoarded is power. Everyone knows that. The moment you teach everyone exactly what you do, you are now replaceable. If there's a piece of equipment that only you know how to operate and only you know how to generate those kind of results, that makes you quite valuable, and it's harder to eliminate you and have you replaced with someone cheaper, right? But the moment that they get you to just train the other person that's cheaper, you're no longer as valuable. They could just eliminate you and produce the same result with somebody else, right? So, this is the challenge. So what they do is they just ask you to just share all your knowledge. Sometimes people do, sometimes they don't. Sometimes it's effective, sometimes it isn't. But, you know what I mean? That's symptomatic of operations that are run by accountants. This is how accountants think, right? Where, everyone's a cost to be reduced, right? No one is a strategic advantage that you could leverage to give you new and better capabilities. No, they're a cost to be reduced. So the solution is always like, it's the race to the bottom. You got anything cheaper? You got anything cheaper? Right? Well, maybe we could fire all these people and hire like the lowest possibly paid employees, and just, even if they were like 70% as effective as the old employees, we'd still be making money. So let's do it. Right? It's the race to the bottom. And usually when they get to the bottom, the whole thing comes crashing down. It does not make money. But that's a lesson that we've learned over and over and over again. And people will still need to learn that lesson because nobody learns. Except people that study business and know that that's not how you run a successful company in the long term. But maybe they don't care about the long term. So, it's a solid strategy. But one thing is certain is that is that it's not to your advantage to be a part of that, right? At least not long term. Gabriel says, hope you're having a good day. Hope I'm not late. Well, I've been at this for a couple of hours. I think I'm coming up to 3 hours. So I'm still here. So if you want to ask a couple of questions, I'll give you an answer. But it's good to hear from you again, Gabriel. Abs TJ says, HR business partner. Okay. So let's go back. Abs TJ. How can I best leverage the HR business partner to my advantage as a first-time manager? I don't know. I don't even understand the question. If you're a first-time manager, what my advice to you will be is, first of all, maybe you know this already, maybe you don't, but if you don't know it, here's the reality. Just having technical skills, okay, is not sufficient to know how to manage something. It just isn't. Like, let's say you were an air traffic controller, okay? And you worked as an air traffic controller for many years, right? And your boss retired, the person who is the manager in charge of all the air traffic controllers, okay? And they promoted you into that position. So now you're managing air traffic controllers. What we find is that, having the technical knowledge certainly helps, okay? So you are a contender. But you are now managing people, okay? So if you're in a people management role, in order to manage people effectively so that they are productive, you need to learn how to manage people. That is a separate skill that has to be tacked on, okay? And it needs to be taught not like by shadowing somebody, but through education, okay? Because you need to be able to get along with every type of person. You need to be able to motivate every type of person. You need to be able to communicate well both ways with every type of person. And that's not something that you have unless you've gone out of your way to learn that stuff. So to be really effective as a first-time manager, you need to realize that it's not just as simple as going up to someone and saying, I need you to do this, right? It gets a lot more challenging than that. If there's problems, knowing how to resolve them, knowing how to motivate people to behave the way you would want them to behave, right? If they're coming in late and you don't want them to come in late, how do you motivate them to come in late? What a lot of people who don't know how to manage people end up doing is their default thing is they go to punishments. That's how, in a lot of corporate cultures, because there's a lack of understanding of how to manage people, they tend to devolve to how it was done in the 19th century. And it just becomes all about punishments. If you don't come in late, then I'm going to, dock your pay, whatever, right? Now, there's all kinds of negative effects that then start coming after you do that. And it can get to the point where it's completely dysfunctional, because the more you start implementing punishments, the less motivated people are going to be, the more the good ones will leave, the more they will say yes, sir, to you, but then not do what you ask them behind your back. It just goes downhill from there. So you just need to realize that managing people, if that is your role, as opposed to managing money or managing assets or anything else, that's a separate skill that you have to tack on. Okay, so everything you can learn in terms of communication, in terms of motivation or persuasion, will really, really help. Okay, and sometimes you need a lot of discipline to be fair to people. You can't just do what's convenient in the moment. That usually backfires big time. Okay, so there's a lot there. I would highly encourage you to tack on those skills, because if you do, you can kick ass at that job, and then they will want to promote you even higher. Okay, if you can outperform in a sort of a frontline manager role, then you are a contender to perform in sort of a general manager role. Where you're tacking on not just people management, but you're tacking on how to manage money and understanding accounting and all this kind of stuff that comes after a sort of supervisory kind of role, if that's what you're in. Okay, so I'm not sure exactly what your situation is, but hopefully that makes sense. Youssef, how do one becomes a CEO? The financial people moving the strings up top. Someone said the only way is to make your own company. LOL. Well, CEOs are like managers, just like anyone else, like any other type of manager, and you can become a manager from almost like any other discipline. Like you can be an accountant and become a manager. You could be a salesperson, like somebody mentioned, and then become a manager. You could be an operations person and then become a manager. You could be an economist, or an HR director, or an influencer type, like leadership and organizational type person. You could be someone that comes from the world of safety or change management. You can come from like marketing. You come from any direction, and be a manager. And there are strengths and weaknesses with each of those disciplines being in charge. The only way to do it really well is to be able to try as much as possible to wear all the hats, because the reality is a composite of all those different perspectives. You can't just look at everything like an accountant would and be extremely successful at managing something. Conversely, you can't look at everything like a salesperson would and be super successful in the long term at managing something. Or from the operations perspective, you need to understand each of those worlds, and you need to be able to look at the situation from each of those perspectives. Now, that's pretty much an impossible task. No one will be able to do that perfectly. And on top of that, we all have our hang-ups and our biases and our opinions and all this stuff that kind of clouds it. So theoretically, there's no way to just be the perfect manager. You're going to have skills in many different areas. That much is certain. You have to be able to manage people. You have to be able to work with people you don't get along with, that you're just completely different to. You have to be able to manage money and understand accounting. You have to be able to understand customers, and even things like public relations and stuff. If you've never thought of that stuff before or had a respect for it, you're going to have to tack on a respect for it and an appreciation for it, and why it's important and how you do it. That's a huge part of some of those roles. Because CEO roles, you're no longer like an employee. You're now someone who represents the organization publicly. So, even if you're in a small company, you're the one that's going and representing that organization, trying to develop partnerships and, relationships with other players in the industry. So networking is like a huge skill. I would be amazed if you could become like a executive or a CEO without like great networking skills. Like that's where you really got to tack that stuff on. You know what I mean? Like, unless you've got friends in high places or something, like just you're part of a rich family or whatever. I mean, I was a CEO of a pretty small company. So, I mean, you know what I mean? It wasn't like it wasn't like working at a blue chip company or something. I mean, you can tell by the way I talk that I would cut being able to do those kind of roles, because you have to be this like super public relations type person. So your question was, how does one become it? Well, networking, a lot of luck. You got to basically be in the right place at the right time also, to a degree, because being a CEO is like you're running a company on behalf of somebody else, right? You don't own the company. You are running it for someone who owns it. Or in the case of bigger companies, like many people that own it, right? So, you have to know the people that own companies. You have to know people in those circles. Like if you don't have any contact with those people, how could you ever be a CEO? Like, it just doesn't work. So you have to get exposed to those people. Now, on this channel, I talk a lot about, doing informational interviews and learning from people. That's probably the single biggest piece of advice I could give to anyone for whatever goal you have in life, is learning how to do an informational interview. Because whatever you're trying to do, whether you're trying to start a company or get a job or switch careers or whatever your goals are, there's somebody out there that they know in their head, they have the information that you're looking for. They know precisely what to do in your specific situation that would open doors for you. They know exactly what you would need to do. Like with specifics, with people and names and times and places. They know all of that. You don't. But that information exists, and it's in the heads of these other individuals, maybe people that run companies or, have some higher level role in your industry or something. So learning how to like approach those people and get like a sit down interview with them, you're not looking for a job. You're looking for information. You're just wanting to have a conversation. How does this work? How does that work? What's your opinion on this? What's your opinion on that? What's your advice for someone trying to do this? This is really important, because whatever your goal is, you would be able to find out exactly what you'd have to do to achieve it, and who you'd have to talk to, and what you'd have to say, and what you'd have to offer them, and blah, blah, blah. Right? That information is out there. That's where it is. It's in the heads of these people. So you got to get in front of them. So the more you learn about how to do that, in my opinion, the more realistic it's going to be to achieve whatever your goal is. Like, for example, I don't know if I should say this. I'm going to just obfuscate the names, but there's a young individual that, is an acquaintance of mine, and she wants to, she's very young. She wants to grow up and be a doctor. And, so the question came to me, like, what should I do? And I said, well, I'm not a doctor. I don't know. But here's how you would find out. You would go and get informational interviews with, say, 5 doctors, in your city, maybe like a surgeon, a general practitioner, somebody who works at a private practice, somebody who works at a hospital, right? Maybe even someone that's like a medical administrator, who helps run the hospital. That would probably be very useful, right? And you sit down with them, you ask them a bunch of questions. Maybe you get them to give you a tour of, like, this is what they do in their job, right? This is my practice. Here's this room, here's that room. I'm here every day. I start at 5 a.m. and I go home at 4 p.m. and this is what I do. And then you will be able to make a much more informed decision as to what you should do, and what are your options and how you would go about pursuing those. And it's probably going to raise a ton more questions, right? You get some answers, but it raises even more questions. So you would then try and get more interviews with people who know the answers to those. And then you'd be super informed. You'd be connected with all the people that are in that business that can help you. And you know what you have to do. And you've got people you could call up and ask questions to on the way, So the question was, how do you become a CEO? It's like, I don't know if there's one answer to that. I sort of stumbled into it, and I was very fortunate. I had an opportunity open up right in front of me. Sometimes that happens. Sometimes it doesn't. But this kind of activity is what I advise people to pursue. Now, I talk about that. I talk about that in my course. Yes, I'm trying to plug a course. But I mean, a lot of people talk about that stuff. A lot of people also tell you that there's no way that you could possibly sit down with important people. There's no way, like, who are you to talk to them? That's what they'll try and convince you of. And if that's what they're saying to you, they're the wrong person to talk to, because they're wrong. I mean, I did it, and I was a nobody. I started out as an absolute nobody in professional terms. So you certainly can do it too. It's just knowing what to do and how to do it. And you can learn all that. It's just like you would learn how to do a job interview. So, you know what I'm saying? So that would be my advice for that kind of stuff. And yes, to cheapen everything, I will say this: I do have that stuff in this course, so yes, you can get that. But yeah, the more you learn and the more you talk to the people that know the stuff you actually want to learn, the more it'll become clear what you need to do. Like, that's why people go to business school. That's half the reason why people get like this, an MBA. That if instead of doing it online or from a book, which is far more efficient, instead they pay big dollars to go to business school, because they're in a class with several other people, and some of those people have family members that are like, higher up in different organizations. And, after you graduate from business school or whatever, you could call them up and you could say, hey, I see you're looking for this, It's like, I could do that, can I put myself forward? Like, can we get together and talk about it? Something like that. And they'll say, and it sounds very slimy, but it actually isn't, because they'll say, hey, I know you. we did some projects together back in school, and you and I got along really well. And I know that you have the same business credential that I do. I know you graduated, and I know what it's like to work with you. And we got along, and you know your stuff. So if the choice is, do I look at you or do I look at a total stranger? I've never even met them. I'm going to check out you first and see if you've got what it takes. And if you do, then maybe there's an opportunity. Right? It's to like land those. Now, that's how they can get those connections. You can get the same connections by doing things like informational interviews. You go out, you meet people, you do it voluntarily. You're there by choice. You're the only one that shows up and says, you know, I'd like to know what you think about this. I'm really interested to learn from you. And that's an incredibly flattering thing. And if they feel that, like, you know, you're actually genuinely interested, you're asking intelligent things, you know, they'll probably think very highly of you. It's like, wow, you're the young person that wants to do this, you know, and, you know, you seem to really be a good listener, and you're asking the right questions. You know, I'll if I can answer questions, sure, you know. So anyway, this is a very long-winded, nebulous kind of thing, but I'm trying to talk to the whole, like, you know, how do you become a CEO thing? I mean, this is what I'd say about it. I'm sure there are many ways to do it. This is some of the stuff I've learned along the way. Annie says some CEOs are salespeople. Yes, they are. Like the areas that's perceived as being the most uncertain, like that has the most uncertainty, like sales and law, right? Like those are generally the higher paid people. And therefore there's, I think, a correlation between proportionally more of those people end up being in charge because it's perceived as like, you know, like for example, operations. I always got pissed off about this traditionally because operations are regarded as like, oh, you want someone to design something for you or you want someone to build something for you? Just pay for it. Just pay people to do it and they'll do it. You can always get that done. But oh no, sales, not just anyone can do that. You have to have this particular individual. Only they can deliver the sales targets that, you know, you might have, right? I always got kind of annoyed with that, but that is the perception. There's a greater uncertainty perceived in the area of sales than there is in, say, operations. I would put forward that that's all an illusion, but rightly or wrongly, that's what people think. So they tend to make salespeople more CEOs more often than they make operations people, if they're appointed. Sometimes people just start their own companies and they're the boss and they came up through operations, so they're in charge, you know? Right? But law is another one. That's why a lot of lawyers tend to be like people in high places because, you know, not just like a lawyer is not a lawyer is not a lawyer. There's bad ones and there's good ones. And if you want a good result, you need to get this one, right? That's the perception, just like salespeople. So they tend to put, so financial people who don't know any better, they tend to put those people in charge because they believe these principles. I'm not sure if they're true or not. I've seen evidence that shows that they're not in fact true, but that's my opinion. Okay. Oh man, I'm starting to get tired here. Youssef says, hello, I am a business economics student studying in a Canadian university. I think we should capitalize Canadian. I have had really bad experiences when looking for co-op internship. What is the best advice to land an internship? To land an internship, go and talk to people in person. That's, you know, like I was just talking about networking. Here's case in point. Why would they pick you over top of other people? It doesn't really matter. Everybody's kind of the same. It doesn't matter to them. You know, if you're a reasonably good student, there's other reasonably good students. Why would they pick you? Well, here's the answer. Because you're the only one that showed up. And in showing up, you signaled that you were more passionate and enthusiastic than anyone else. You were more dedicated. And beyond signaling things, you demonstrated that you're professional, that you're easy to deal with. You give them a free sample of your communication skills, right? And your competence. You showed up on time to talk to the right people at the right place to get something done, to get a point across. And you were more effective than the person who didn't show up at all and simply sent in an application that's just the faceless application. Okay? They could pick anyone, but you want them to pick you. This will give you the edge. Okay? Either that, or you could just be head and shoulders more brilliant than anyone else and go head to head with them on paper and win. Like that too will work. But unless that's you, this is the other thing that will give you an edge. It's something that's so simple to do, but it has such a huge impact. Okay? Will it always work? No, but it will work a lot of the time. Gabriel says, I was looking at some videos by influential people in IT, and their suggestion is to spend every single hour of your life to do free work, build in public, and help other people for free. Okay, you go on. Things are so bad those days that people are told to slave away a lot of hours every day just to have a job. I can't comment because I'm not in IT, so I wouldn't know. I can't say that's true or it's not. I imagine it would be like a lot of things. It's true some of the time. You know, if you are in certain circles and you're in contact with certain people and you're doing free stuff and you're sending it to them, maybe that does open doors. I don't know. But I understand your concern. It's like a big gamble, isn't it? You risk, you know, working your entire life away and it could amount to nothing, right? And how would you test it? Do you do it for a week? Do you do it for a month? Is that enough? Do you do it for 3 months? Like, the stakes keep going up to test it. So I get it. Listen, I can't say whether that's the way to go or not. Here's another example where you should get in front of people and do informational interviews. Who would know this? Maybe if you sat down with the owners of a few software companies in your hometown, they could give you some pointers. You know, you could say, like, what advice would you have to younger people coming in now that want to get a toehold in this industry and want to be given a chance? Like, you know, what would you say? And see what they say. I won't know the answer to that, but they would because they're in the industry, right? At least they could tell you who they would give a chance to and what they would pay attention to, right? Now, you talk to several of those people, maybe you get certain things, there's certain patterns you notice. They all say one thing, but then each person mentions these other things, but it's not the consensus opinion, you know? So, you know what I mean? Like the more of that you do, you know, you can only win, right? So that's what I would recommend. Like I said before, this is yet another example that reinforces my general approach, which is get informational interviews with the people that would know the answers to these questions. You know, if you're trying to impress people at IT companies, go and talk to the people at the top of those IT companies. Okay? It's just that simple. Vivian Starr says, I got fired after 2 years. I was overworked. I'm sorry to hear that, Vivian. I did complain at the end, and I think that's why I got fired. HR created a metric goal meant just for me, which was BS. What can I say in the interview? Well, I kind of talked about that on my last live stream like 2 hours ago. Don't say you were fired. That's the bottom line. Like, the name of the live stream I just completed just over an hour ago was, what's the best answer to the question, why did you leave your last job? Okay? That's what we were just talking about. And the bottom line is, if you were fired, don't say you got fired. Instead, say you left. You were ready to do more, you know? And then don't go into these kinds of details, because the more you do, the more they think that you're someone they're not going to select. The more likely they will eliminate you. The deeper you get into this story. What would be ideal is if you said, I was ready to do more. There weren't really opportunities there. What I was wanting to do was this kind of work and this kind of work, this kind of work. Oh, coincidentally, the type of work that this job involves here in the interview, that's why I'm here. Right? This is what I want to do. This is what I'm looking for. And that's what you say, and then you shut the hell up. You don't give the story that goes into all the sordid details about why it didn't work out with the other company. I'm not trivializing it, Vivian. I believe you, and I sympathize with you, and it sucks. But if you're in the process of making a first impression to people who don't know you, you don't talk about things that you failed at, things where people thought you were bad, things where it was stressful and you had problems handling it. That's not how you make a good impression. And that's what your job is in the job interview, is to make a good impression. You're the person they want to hire. You can handle this. You're the perfect person for it. You're a perfect fit, right? So don't say any kind of negative things like this, okay? Keep that to yourself. Keep that under your hat, okay? You and I know it, and we all know it here in the chat now, and that's fine. And then, it's a very real thing. But don't tell it to them under those circumstances, because you're trying to sell yourself to them. You're trying to say, you should forget all the other candidates, and you should hire me, and here's why, right? And no part of that discussion goes into, well, they fired me because they said that I couldn't do this, but I tell you that I can. It's no part of it. Does that make sense? I wish you the very best of luck, Vivian. Abs TJ says, I appreciate the advice, and yes, I'll be managing people. Okay, good. Yes. If you're interested in managing people or some kind of operation, this can be the beginning of like a really, really cool thing that not only might be your calling, but it will be your source of prosperity and have a long and glorious career that isn't even limited to the industry you're in now. Like if you're a great manager, you go to a higher enough level, those skills are transferable. You can jump industries, right? Okay, depending on the details. So this could be the beginning of a really great thing. So learn all you can. It's not going to go 100% smoothly. Nothing ever does. But just try and have an open mind. Try and work with people. Try and learn all you can, and recognize that management in itself is its own sort of area of learning. Because a lot of people that are put in management roles don't realize this. They think that, I can do the technical work, so I should be able to manage people doing the technical work. Well, not necessarily. If you have a great team that, they think like you and they talk like you and they act like you, maybe it does work out. But if you have anything other than that, you might be in for some surprises. So learn all you can, and I think you could really crush it. Okay, I'm going to have to wind this down in a few minutes, but Gabriel says, should I pay for information? No. It's not a paid thing. It's not a paid thing. It's the opposite of a paid thing. When you show up for these, you want people to think rightly that the reason why you're doing this is because you're just so enthusiastic and passionate to learn, right? You don't pay people for these. It's not that at all. I think I have failed around 50 behavioral interviews because I job hopped a bit and couldn't convince them that I was going to be a good hire. After 500 applications, I should have lied from the start. Okay, that's one possible solution, is where you just take stuff off your resume. Like you don't want to admit that you had your own company. You don't want to admit that you worked these 50 places. You did do them, and you should get credit for them, but they won't serve your purpose in this context, in this particular game, because of the value that people place on different things. They won't regard that in your favor. So that's one way of doing it, where you just leave stuff off. There, you could try that. Sometimes that works. There are other things too. Like the big obvious one that I always end up talking about is networking. Networking will trump this. Okay, like all these concerns of like, oh no, you're a job hopper. It's like, if they like you and they're convinced that like, wow, you know your stuff and you're enthusiastic and, it trumps all of that. It trumps any technical concern that these people can have. So that's also a route that you can go. I believe that the treatment was too harsh. Yeah, it was. But it's because they're not recognizing the value of things. Like if they think that working, like, look, I'm a generalist and I've worked across 5 industries and I totally get it. I refused to stay in the first industry that I worked in because that was very much a seniority based thing. The way you moved up was you waited for your boss to retire and then you just filled their shoes. And it's like, my boss was going to retire in like 15 years and I just didn't feel like, as a young man, I didn't feel like working in essentially the same job in the same place for 15 years, hoping that I would move into my boss's job. You never know. I could wait 15 years and they promote someone else into the role, And unlike the culture of that industry, I refused to play that game. Now, in a sense, I paid for it because there are people that stayed there that were coworkers of mine that now they're running big things in that industry. Great, But I moved on to other things. I did it my way, and I still got where I wanted to go. But I took a much more non-standard tract, and a big just my personal experience. Part of my value is having seen different solutions in different industries. Where over here in this industry, they're still struggling with like how to solve a problem. But unbeknownst to them, that problem has already been completely solved in this other industry that's kind of unrelated. The problem is you don't get a lot of people that work in this industry and that industry, How many people understand how to repair motorbikes, but also work in industrial chemicals? Not many. How many people understand how to run a pizza place, but also understand how to make women's garments for the European market? Not that many, right? But like sometimes you find like, people working on like, how do you solve this inventory problem over here? We can't find a solution. Meanwhile, it's been completely solved over here. So when you get someone that's seen that solution that then comes to work here, they say, oh, well, I know exactly how to solve that outright. And then they implement a solution and everybody thinks you're a genius. But you didn't do anything. You just copied what you saw. Somebody else solved it years ago. You're just benefiting from their work and you're using it in a place where these people are uninformed because there's imperfect knowledge sharing. So like that's something that's helped me in my career. That's been one of the advantages of having a diverse kind of background, working across these different industries that are quite different, But that's just my personal thing. I don't know how common that is. You know what I mean? So what I'm trying to say, Gabriel, is that they're judging you for like being kind of a generalist, for like working in all these different roles and seeing all these different things. It's like, obviously, they don't understand the value of that, right? Would you rather hire somebody who's only seen and done one thing in their lives? Or would you rather hire someone who knows how to do the thing you want to hire them for, but they've also seen 25 other things, other approaches, other cultures, other solutions, right? Other ways of doing things. I would get the person that's seen a lot of different things because they can bring all of that, to their role. So you would have quite a valuable asset there, having seen all these different things. But that's not what matters to these particular people, and you're trying to impress them. And that's where we get the title of this live stream today, which is Job Search, You Have to Dance to Their Tune. So you have to show them the things that they care about, not necessarily the things you care about, or maybe even the reality of things, right? Gabriel says, yeah, you are right. I even tried to create a narrative where I saw different technologies in different ways. Where, yeah, you see, you're still trying to convince them of what you see your value as, right? And unfortunately, that usually is doomed to failure. You have no choice but to dance to their tune, to their, if they place value on this stuff, that's how you present yourself, right? So if they got a problem with, the fact that you've worked all these different places, and that in itself is the problem, then I hate to say it, but you just leave that stuff off your resume and you don't talk about it. Not easy to do. A little piece of you probably dies inside when you do that. But if you're trying to play this very specific game with these very specific people, that might be what's needed to get past them and convince them. Stupid and unfair, but true. But if you can do it, you win, you get the job, and then who gives a crap what they think? We both know that you're valuable, and you will be able to reap the benefits of having those 50 jobs or whatever it is, once you're on the job. And they won't be able to explain it, but they'll see that you're a kick-ass employee, and they might even conclude that, we were so brilliant for recognizing that when we hired you, right? And that's the cherry on top. I have to wind this down. You guys are awesome. There are 24 people here. Thank you for being here today. Happy New Year's to everyone. Happy New Year. And I wish you all the best in 2025. This is going to be your year. This is where you're going to achieve your goals, where you're going to find your prosperity. Whatever you're chasing, keep improving yourself, keep trying things. It's going to happen. Thank you so much. You guys are awesome. I'll be back on Friday. I've got my regular weekly live stream on Friday. So if you have any more questions, come back then and we can get into it. Until then, take care of yourselves.